those Nazi civilian leaders in World War II
Hmm.
were insane in precisely the same way that the defund the police governments are insane today.
I ran across a speech in Fyodor Dostoevsky's. Is it a novel or a simple or a short story? It's a
It's a
novel,
novel. It's a
right?
novel.
The possessed or the demons. Real quick though, again, I did want to get nailed down. Why is there two different titles, like demon or the demons or the possessed?
It's well, I mean, demons possess people. So in
Right,
a sense, it's talking either about what those who are possessed are doing, or the
right,
demons who are making them do it.
okay,
But
but
the point of both is that what they're doing is diabolical.
right, yeah. So let's just get into brass tacks. Doesn't matter. Okay, it was just maybe a translation thing between
Yeah.
Russian and English. Okay, so this was written. I'm going to read it if you don't mind. I'll
No, it's fine.
try not to be too dramatic. But this was written in 1871,
Yeah.
and then it was translated in English in 1916, just before the Russian Revolution. And a little background on Fyodor: he himself was a nihilist who ended up
Nihilist.
on a
Yeah.
scaffold where the Tsar was going, or at least pretending he was about to execute them. Do you want to give that story? Do you know that story?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so well, I'll give the very short. I only read it twice, so I'm not an expert. But
That's all
basically,
right.
he was rounded up with a whole bunch of other nihilists at the time. So I guess nihilism was a bad thing to the Tsar.
Yeah, I'll say.
Okay, and this was some kind of movement going on in this time frame. Is that correct?
Yeah. It
Right.
basically, the nihilists were revolutionaries and wanted to, basically, they believed that all existing society was inherently unfair and unjust, and so had to be destroyed. Nothing
Yeah.
should remain. Nihil is the Latin.
Nihil. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
And
nihilist.
right. So he ends up on a scaffold, rounded up with a whole bunch of his compatriots, and he sees a church off into the distance. The Eastern Rite golden domes, beautiful things, and he. I guess I think to the story as Bishop Sheen tells it, he asked God, if I get a chance, I'm going to go see that church and I will be a better man or something. He has a conversion because
Yeah.
when you're facing death, it gives you some clarity in life.
As, uh, as Samuel Johnson said, depend upon it, when a man's to be hanged in the morning, it focuses his mind wonderfully.
Yes. So the point is that the Tsar was bluffing or something to that effect, and calls it off at the last minute and sends him to the gulags, or the out there to
To Siberia, they didn't have a
Siberia.
gulag in those
Yeah,
days.
right. It wasn't a gulag, right? So he sends him out to Siberia, and he writes other books out there in Siberia. He learns about human nature like he never learned before, and under those conditions. Anyway, when he comes back, he is a converted man.
Mm.
He's converted to freedom. He realizes the value of freedom, is how Bishop Sheen put it. Before that, he just was like a nihilist. He's like our kids today. They totally take everything for granted, have no appreciation for what they've got. And now he does have appreciation. As we said, it clarifies.
Yeah, clarified his thinking marvelously.
Yes, marvelously. And I sometimes think that I do agree that I think all young children should have to go through boot camp, whether they're going to join the military or not. I think it would be a good clarifying thing for our kids, but I
Well,
digress. To quote
it's
Charles
always
Cologne.
it's always a shock to find out that you're not the most important thing in the world,
Yes.
because of course you have been at home,
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
and
I'm
then you
guilty. I
you
was
leave
guilty.
home, and your mommy and your daddy and mumsy and daddykins aren't there for you anymore to take
Mm.
care of you, and then we'll have to be a big boy and compete with other boys, and
I
and
gotta
and,
pay
and
taxes.
oh, it's awful.
That's awful.
I still haven't gotten over it.
So to get back to our story, so Fyodor comes back, and he writes this book. And I'm just going to read this one speech. It's one character, Vera Kovensky, to Nikolai Stavarogin. Did I do okay? I think so.
Stavrogin, I think. Stavrogin.
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 Stavrog. Okay.
Stavrogin. You're the Eastern right here. You should
I
be able to
know,
pronounce
right?
stuff.
Stop. Oh, I feel guilt. I feel bad. You're crushing me here. Anyway, there's one character speaking to the other character. The one character is the nihilist revolutionary. The uh, Nikolai is a upper class person he wishes to use to fund his revolution. Is that fair? Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, Varanasi speaks first. Okay. Listen, first of all, we'll make an upheaval. Do you know what we are tremendous? Did you know that we are tremendously powerful already? Our party does not consist only of those who commit murder and arson, fire off pistols in the traditional fashion, or bite colonels. They are only a hindrance. I've reckoned them all up. A teacher who laughs with children at their God and at their cradle is on our side. The lawyer who defends an educated murderer because he is more cultured than his victims and could not help murdering them to get money is one of us. The schoolboys who murder a peasant for the sake of the sensation are ours. The juries who acquit every criminal are ours. The prosecutor who trembles at a trial for fear he should not seem advanced, paraphrase liberal enough, is ours. Ours. Among officials and literary men, we have lots and lots, and they don't even know it themselves. On the other hand, the docility of schoolboys and fools has reached an extreme pitch. The schoolmasters are bitter and bilious. On all sides, we see vanity puffed up out of all proportion, brutal, monstrous appetites. Do you know how many we shall catch? By little, ready made ideas. When I left Russia, Littrus,
Lutrez.
Littrez dictum that crime is insanity was all the rage. I come back and I find that crime is no longer insanity, but simply common sense, almost a duty. Anyway, a gallant protest. They say, how can we expect a cultured man not to commit murder if he is in need of money? But these are only the first fruits. The peasants are drunk, the mothers are drunk, the children are drunk, the churches are empty. Only one or two generations of vice are essential now. Monstrous, abject vice by which a man is transformed into a loathsome, cruel, egotistical reptile. That's what we need. And what's more, a little fresh blood, that we may get accustomed to it. Ah, that if we only had more time. That's the only trouble. We have no time. We must proclaim destruction. Why is it? Why is it that idea has such fascination? But we must have a little exercise. We must. We'll set fires going. We'll set legends going. Every scurvy group will be of use to us. Out of those very groups, I'll pick you out fellows so keen they'll not shrink from shooting and be grateful for the honor of the job. And there will be an upheaval. There's going to be such an upset as the world has never seen before. Is that prophecy for the United States of America, Charles Colomb?
Yeah, sadly, I would have to say. It really,
I'm
really
getting
is.
chill. I read that and my hair is standing up on my arms.
You have every right for it to do so. I think that it's entirely too prophetic. Um, I mean, one of the things we bear in mind, of course, is that while the events of the past few months probably would not have gone the way they did without the COVID monster,
Right.
um, all that's really being seen is what was already there.
Right.
So, the stupidity and inanity of the leaders of so many of our major cities, the and some of the states, the cowardice of a lot of our religious leaders.
A lot. How about
Uh,
the majority?
yeah, that'd be fair. And for that matter, the sheer intellectual and moral bankruptcy of our learned institutions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you saw the woke list that I
Yeah.
composed for Crisis Magazine,
No,
but
sir. I'm sorry.
it's worth going over. It
Okay.
was tough. It was tough writing. What I did was I compiled a list of all the learned, cultural, religious, and other institutions I could find, and there are a lot more than what I've got on the list
Sure. I'll bet.
that basically issued things attacking systemic racism and all that,
Mm-hmm.
while American cities were going up in flames,
Hmm.
and basically, attacking whiteness and all this kind of garbage.
Right.
Um, and very often attacking the founders of their own institutions.
Well, yeah.
And
Well, nobody's sacred. There's
no,
nobody. Even and in Philadelphia, they attacked a statue of a known abolitionist.
they did indeed. But I will tell you something. If you have the gall to be taking a salary from an organization or sitting on its board, and you have the unmitigated gall to attack its founders, what you need to do is quit.
Mm-hmm. They ain't gonna do that.
Show your bravery. Get that conscience out there. Yeah, quit. And I'll tell you, I won't say who it was, but I was really annoyed to see the great grandsons of one enormous figure of
Why
history.
won't you say who it was?
Because it's too painful.
Oh, I'm sorry, but
Uh, Agreeing with pulling down their forebear's statue.
mm.
And when I
Their
read
own
that,
forebears. Wait a minute. Are you saying their own relative, their own forebear?
their own great grandfather,
God help
whose
them.
last name they bear, and I saw that, I said, you know what? Why don't you just change your bloody last name to Smith? Because the only reason why anybody listens to you yapping about your far better forebear is that you've got his name.
Right.
So
So
why
so
don't you be
reject
one
it
of the
all.
real
Right.
people?
Reject it all. Go get a factory job. Get
Yep.
out of academia. Get your fingernails dirty and throw it all away.
Reject it all. Toss away that terrible privilege that came
Yes.
that came with that. I mean, let me put it this way: if you're white and you yap about white privilege, give it up.
You know what that reminds me of, Charles? Is the people who think the population who believe that people are pollution, like pollution, like there's too many people in the world. I always say, well, yo,
Off
step up,
yourself.
jump off
Off
a bridge
yourself.
for us all. Yeah, show us how loyal you are to the process.
We'll miss you, Pathfinder. We'll
See
miss
ya.
you. I
Yes.
mean, it's
We'll put
all
a
such
brass plaque on the bridge for you.
absolutely a small plaque, of course, because we don't want to leave too much of an imprint.
Yeah,
But
right. Very small.
well, the carbon imprints are all the rage. No, but honestly, if you feel that strongly, get out of it. Give up that wonderful job. Give up that salary and do something useful with your little life.
Well, whatever use Jordan Peterson is, he has a lot of good things and a lot of bad things, a lot of baggage, a lot of good. He did bring up an excellent point on how ungrateful most professors are for the regular men like myself who work construction, who go out and build the bridges that he drove across to get to his glorious college. You know, the welders and the steel fitters and the electricians that make his entire world possible, that he
But
completely.
he's also ungrateful for that world itself because he rejects the men that founded it.
Right, yeah, the very institutions he's
Yeah.
rejected. Right.
So you know what? Give it up. Get the hell out. I
Charles, you're asking
believe
for a character. You're asking for a character move that they have. They have no character, and that was the point of this speech in this
no,
nihilist. They are nihilist. I mean, they are
they are
basically people.
nihilists.
They have no core value of anything except what was it? How do you put it in here? There's this one line that is excellent. Let's see. One or two generations of vice are essential now. Monstrous, abject vice by which man is transformed into a loathsome, cruel, egotistical reptile. That's
Well,
them,
and we've had that bias. I mean, you think of abortion, you think of
right?
contraception, you think of everything we've been since I was a boy.
Yeah, when I was a boy, right? We're about the same age almost.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I one thing that's important to remember is that our dominant classes decayed at the same rate that everything else did. Uh, that is to say, you look around at the general population of the United States and really of the Western world, and there has been a dumbing down, a stupefaction. But it's important to bear in mind that it's been all across the way. I'll tell you, and I've said this elsewhere, but I don't mind saying it again.
Please
Uh, I came to three unpleasant conclusions about our general rulership as I got older.
define general rulership. Who do you mean?
Oh, the dominant sort. I mean, I don't mean deep, dark conspiracies, the Illuminati hiding in their caves. No.
Right.
Leadership of any society is very much a matter of a small group who, not necessarily always consciously, but as a group, more or less point the direction the direction in which things are going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And some of it is conscious, a lot of it isn't,
Mm-hmm.
because it's made up simply of their attitudes. To put it another way, I'm going to this fine institution of learning here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, most of my classmates are, not all of them, but most of them are young, believing Catholics of a certain age.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're going to have a certain community of thought is the best way I can put it. They're
Mm-hmm.
not going to be identical, and there'll be different groups among them. It's not
Mm-hmm.
monolithic,
Right.
but nevertheless, they're more or less, even when they disagree, they speak the same language.
There's a core.
Yeah, and they understand each other in a way
Right.
that other people might not,
Right.
and they may not understand other people.
Right.
That's true of any group anywhere.
Right.
You were talking about your welders and bridge builders. Well,
Right. Right.
they have a core.
Yes, they do.
They sure do. It's true of any
Construction
group.
workers are very unique. Yes.
They sure are. I mean, as a boy, I remember the hard hats in various places letting loose on hippies. That wasn't fun, I'll tell you. But
Were you the
I
hippie?
what's that? No, I
Were you the
wasn't. I
hip?
was
Oh,
no, I
okay.
didn't. I didn't care much for the hippies as a boy, and I was too young anyway. Not even a hard hat who was irate at a bunch of long hairs would go after a 7-year-old kid. It just
Right. Right.
that's
Right.
not the way. Hey, come here, kid, with a wrench. That's that really was not the way hard hats did things. I mean, it
Well,
just
to be
wasn't.
fair, most construction workers are actually upstanding dudes.
And
And I
most,
mean that. And when I said dudes, I mean that most are dudes. But
yeah,
go ahead.
and most 7-year-olds are not out rioting with hippies. But at any rate,
Right. Go ahead.
there were
So
too
there's
many
a
7
core
year.
of. Go ahead. You were talking about your college, and
So
there's a core. I don't
so
want
there's a
to
core,
distract you.
but it's true of everything, and that is how you have to look at the dominant classes because they're not identical, they're not monolithic, but they do have certain commonalities. President Trump, for instance, why do you think he's soft on LGBTQ
Yeah.
XL5? Well, it's because people of that class and that mentality are like that.
You mean at that rich echelon of people,
That
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 wealth?
particular that particular rich echelon of people.
Okay.
I mean, I know other wealthy people for whom it's anathema,
Right.
but
Right.
but for
No, I see
someone
it. I see it.
where he is, let's just say their grip on morality is very
Tenuous.
tenuous. Yes, I mean, bear
You're
in mind
welcome.
this is a guy who's been married 3 times.
Yes. Correct.
And I always thought it was funny before he came along that everyone held up Rush Limbaugh as the great defender of the family. And of course he's had three
Pills.
wives, so I guess he knows about families, having had so many of them.
So many.
Uh, it and again, I don't say this to put them down because in
Well, it's
their
it's the Protestant milieu. You can't help it.
yeah,
They're free to do.
it's it's what they come from.
Yes.
I mean, it's one of the big problems, for instance, for the ordinarian is that many of the Episcopal priests who wanted, and Anglican priests elsewhere, who wanted to come into the ordinariate as priests or even
Hmm.
just come in, had marital issues.
Right.
That's a big problem with Protestant clergy. It didn't used to be, but it is now. So I mention all this because I think it's see there are two things that lead, I think, to an over reliance on conspiracy theory for an explanation of things.
Okay.
One is the failure to realize that the top echelons are very much like the lower ones, only in power. But like they
I'm
react to
not
the
sure
same.
I agree with that thesis.
No, it's true. They're not lizard
Clear it
men.
out. Clear it out. What do you
They're
mean?
not lizard men, but they react. They're cliquish the way all of us are.
Okay. Well,
They have
yeah.
their own jargon the way we all do. They're comfortable with certain ideas and uncomfortable with
But
others the way we all
that's
are.
humanity. That's my point. So,
This is my point.
right.
Now, they now, of course, every group of humanity is different for particular specific reasons.
Right.
And these people are the way they are because of their position in life, because of their education, because of their experiences, and so on.
Their
The
lack
reason,
of their lack of threat to their well-being because they have so much wealth. I mean,
well, that certainly is part of it. Although it's also important to bear in mind that unless you're very, very wealthy, there's an old saying: it takes a really smart man to make real money, but it
mhm.
takes an utter genius to keep it.
Right. Right.
And that's something people forget. I mean, similarly, if you look at how many, uh, not just charitable, but educational, cultural, artistic things, they only exist because the wealthy have excess dough they're willing to dump on
Right. It's true.
them.
No,
And
there's a value. Sure.
one of the things the government don't realize, let's say in California, is that if you say soak the rich, what's going to suffer first? But all
The
that
poor.
stuff.
The poor.
Well, of course, that's
Uh,
who's going to suffer
sure.
first. Because the rich will say, well, okay, I'll pay your taxes, but guess what? Or they'll leave.
Or they'll leave. Right. That's New York City's issue right now.
It's New York City's issue. It's also California's issue. You have something like 40% of the population pay 90% of the taxes or something. It's crazy. And you drive that 40% out, guess what?
All right. So you
So the point I'm making though is that when you ask me who the dominant classes are, they're
right.
not all the wealthy are not part of the dominant classes.
Will
And
this election change the dominant class
no,
one way or the other?
no,
Not at all.
no. What I think will happen is this. I think well, I'm going to make my predictions with
Hmm.
this caveat.
Hmm.
I'm turning 60 this year.
Mm.
I pray that we're both alive for my 70th and we can laugh at how stupid and wrong I was.
We can laugh anytime, Charles, but I thank you for
Well,
that
that's
prayer.
true. I'm easy to laugh at, but I
Together,
have a
not at,
I
with.
oh, what is it? We're not laughing at you. We're laughing about you.
Oh, right. Okay.
But no,
Go ahead. So you don't think
I
there'll be a change? Like, I,
well,
with all
I
due
think there'll be
respect,
a
in America, it
change.
seems to me, if I
I think
may
there'll be a.
interrupt,
I think sure.
I think we put way too many eggs in this. I'm scared to death that we put all our eggs in this election.
You're right. I said there won't be a change of the ruling structure as a result of the election,
Okay.
but there are other forces at play. So here's my prediction, such as it is, with my best Criswellian. I wish I had my blonde Criswell fright wig to put on. I'd feel much more.
I'm
Look
sorry.
him
I'm
up.
just okay. Or sorry, sorry, Professor. Look him up. I'm
No,
not giving you that one. That's your
I'm not
job.
giving you that one. You look up Criswell. He was my
Spell it.
landlord when we came to Hollywood.
Spell it.
Everything I learned about phony psychics, I learned from him.
Spell it.
So, Criswell, the amazing Criswell.
Okay.
Criswell predicts.
All right. Go
He
ahead.
used to say, we are all interested in the future, for that is where you and I are going to spend the rest of our lives.
Listen,
Which was true.
if you want to use obscure references, Forgive me if I ask you about them.
Criswell is not obscure to me. So
Oh,
there.
right. Well, of course, it's all about you.
You
Okay.
well, in a world of solipsists, we're all alone. But
Right.
what I would do if I were you is be sure to watch the movie Ed Wood.
Oh, yeah, I saw that movie.
Well, Criswell, the character of Criswell is in it.
Oh,
If you want
okay.
to see the
That was
man
a while
himself,
ago. I was a young man when I saw it. Okay.
if you want to see the man himself, watch Plan 9 from Outer Space. He opens the film.
Okay.
Great movie.
Okay.
Real
Well,
production
that puts
values.
the milieu in place for me.
All right.
Okay. So you were saying. What were we saying? We got.
So what I was saying, well, my point, and I do have one, in the words of Ellen DeGeneres, is that this is what I suspect is going to happen. Firstly, well, even before I say that, I'll say this, and I began to say this, so I'll try to push it through. When we were young, you and I, and
Yeah.
Roe v. Wade came in, I accepted the fact that we were ruled by evil people.
Hmm.
And for a 12-year-old, that's a pretty heavy thing to bear. Bear in mind, I'm a Boy Scout and,
Hmm.
love my country and all that. Still do,
Right.
more than most people who talk about loving it.
Right.
But nevertheless, uh, I accepted the fact that we're ruled by evil people.
Hmm.
Who else would make infanticide the law of the land and pretend that it was in the Constitution? What kind of utter scum would do that? Well, our
Right.
masters. Our masters would. But, as my father explained to me, now they're evil, but many people have lived long lives under evil regimes and managed.
Hmm.
Well, then time went by, and I was in college, and Carter was president, and all sorts
Hmm.
of things went kind of screwy. And again, just as the Supreme Court by itself and Roe v. Wade by itself was
Hmm.
simply the catalyst for my understanding and not the totality, so too, Carter, with Carter, I came to understand that the dominant sort were not just evil, they were insane.
Right.
And, and by
Disconnected from reality.
precisely more in love with their own ideology than they
Which is in
were
this speech right here. Okay.
exactly, precisely. Yeah, and you thought I was being irrelevant. Haha.
No, I didn't think
So
so. You
not
know
not
you're
that I've been
never irrelevant.
capable of not that I've been
No, no,
capable of
Trump.
irrelevance.
I've
I
never
can
known you
I
to
can
be
be irrelevant.
irrelevant. Please do
I
not.
can be irrelevant if I want. I don't
No,
care.
no, please don't. I
I'm
only
not
got
one
so
of
much.
these people. I'm not one of these people who put a lot of store in relevance. So just so you'll know. But no, seriously. But I accepted the fact as a college lad that yeah, our rulers are evil and they're insane. But you
Hmm.
know what? A lot of people who lived under evil, insane regimes and managed. Maybe I would too.
Managing, managing is one thing. I mean, all right. Well, that kind of
But
leads to a question that I
but
wrote. Go ahead. Go
but
ahead.
the third realization I came to under Mr. Obama, and you got to bear in mind that our rulership was devolving,
Oh my God.
devoluting at the same time that the rest of us were. We were all
Well,
becoming
speak for
stupider and stupider.
thyself. I don't know if I was deluded.
No, I always speak as a whole. Uh,
Oh, you mean
so
as a culture?
because as a culture, as a
All right.
people, we
Right.
were
Okay.
being dumbed down, but
Correct.
so were our leadership. The whole thing was declining,
Right.
and that was when it came to me in the reign of Mr. Obama that yes, they're evil, and yes, they're insane, but they're also stupid.
Yeah, they're just dopes. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's just like
and that it's yeah, they
dickhead.
don't understand. And of course, with that stupidity is arrogance.
Hmm.
Now, what did all this lead to? Well, uh, it led to an academic class, an intelligentsia that were completely bankrupt in terms of ideology. Uh, it led to our neo-Marxists because something else was going on at the same time,
Right.
and
Sure.
that was that we lost the urban proletariat. And when I
Yeah,
say we
you brought
lost
that
them,
up. You brought that up in that discussion about the two parties that the proletariat, as known by Marxists, so to speak, doesn't exist anymore in America.
No, it doesn't exist. So what to do? What do we replace it with? What they did was they sort of laterally transferred it from class to race.
Right. Right.
But see, there's a problem with that.
Mhm.
Firstly, a lot of blacks aren't that stupid. So a lot of
Right.
them really don't swallow it. And
Right.
the
Right.
same is true for a lot of other non-whites. Now,
Right.
they were right to suppose a lot of whites were stupid and would eat it.
Yes. Right.
But and to a degree that is shocking, how stupid white people can be.
Well, can I interject? So another YouTube personality or whatever you want to call it, new media guy, Jesse Lee Peterson. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's a black guy. He's really kind of
I've
cool. Okay,
heard of
so
him.
he said the problem with white people is that we're afraid of black people. He says
Well,
stop, because he's hard right conservative black guy. So stop being afraid of black people. We're all people.
well, that's true, but here's where the problem comes in, however.
Mhm.
Mobs by nature, and I don't care what kind of a mob it is, I don't care what it's doing.
Right.
Mobs by nature are stupid and they're cruel and they're nasty.
Right.
It's the nature because in mobs, just like on the internet, we feel free of personal responsibility and our worst natures can be
Right.
unveiled.
Correct.
There's a great feeling of being in a mob. Doesn't last long. It's like being on a drug. But
Right. Right.
while you've got that mob thing going on with you, it's great. Um, but here now is the prediction. I am afraid that the moronic leadership and the Antifas and the BLMs and all the rest, the BLTs, uh, I am afraid that they are rousing amongst the deplorables, the great unwashed, the people whom the leadership are used to disregarding, the denizens of flyover country,
Mm,
the great coalition of the difficult and annoying, as our rulership would see them.
right.
They're pissing them off,
Oh, harshly.
and
Listen,
they're going to wait.
I'm in that little niche you're talking about.
Yep,
There were people who had no problem with black people until now.
until
Now
now,
all of a sudden they have a problem with black people.
and they unfortunately, there's some things you should not wake up,
Yes.
and the bloodlust of the majority is something you should never wake up. And I don't care what country it is. I don't care who the majority are.
Mhm.
If this were Haiti, I would say, you better do something nice with the blacks. You really better. You shouldn't piss them off.
What was that great book by that United Nations general?
Oh, a
Something with the
soldiering for
devil.
peace.
No, something with the devil. He had a French name. Anyway, it was about the Hutus and the Tutsis
Oh, in Rwanda. Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Rwanda. Right.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Same,
it's just
same.
like same thing. Right.
You don't want to annoy the majority if you've got half a brain. But remember, when you've got a leadership that are evil, insane, and stupid, it's
Mhm.
difficult for them to make good decisions.
Okay.
It's the way it
Just
is.
right.
They're just it's the way it happens. So I believe that in the last 2 years of the Obama administration, this country was coming to a boiling point. When you have the black sheriff of Milwaukee declare that the president of the United States had declared war on law enforcement, I mean, and people have forgotten this. It's
Oh, sure.
been 5 or 6 years, so it's a long time for people. But I haven't forgotten it. And I
Yeah.
knew I knew that Trump was going to be elected the first time when I saw him debate the first time with the
Oh,
Republicans. I
sure.
knew I knew he was going to win.
My vote was in.
Well, it wasn't a
I
question of
said,
my vote, but I knew he was going
well,
to.
there you are. I lost you for a second. Yeah, something happened.
Yeah. All right.
You
Where,
didn't
where did
pay
I
your
cut
phone
off at?
bill again? Didn't you pay your phone bill,
Yeah.
sir?
My brother tells me that all the time because his phone calls are constantly dropping. So he'll say, "Well, you didn't pay your bill again."
Well, the
Anyway,
last point I heard was that you were saying that there was a black sheriff who opposed the black president.
yep.
Okay.
And I knew at that point, I knew I was relieved that when I realized that Trump was going to win because I figured that that would give another 4 years
Mhm.
before we had to worry about this. Now, mind you, I didn't realize that there would be the ongoing constant anti-Trump stuff.
Oh yeah,
Had I
it's an
known, though, I would
absolute
have.
suppression of the people's vote. Absolutely.
Well, the attempt, because the fact of the matter is, they're not running the show, and they hate that. It's
Oh, I
upsetting.
hate it. Yes.
And so everything they've been able to do to discredit this guy, to toss him out, it hasn't worked because they're stupid. They're the insanity of pursuing the impeachment, well, they didn't have a tinker's damn of a chance in hell of getting it through the Senate, was madness.
Yeah. What
You're
were they
using
thinking?
up. I don't know. You will see. It's difficult to predict stupid and nuts and insane and evil, but they were. It was crazy, and it played. Everything they've done played into his hands. I mean, if I
Yeah,
hated his
absolutely.
guts and wanted to throw him out, this is the worst possible way to do it. But here's the thing: they rallied his base. He, on
Hmm.
the other hand, not being a real politician, but knowing what he had to do if he wanted to renew his employment,
Hmm.
he played to go figure his base. So
Sure,
that's
it
why
better.
when well, see, most politicians don't think that way. So a year or two ago, when he decided he was going to pull the troops home from Iraq and Afghanistan,
Hmm.
I had people say to me in LA, "Oh, he's going to open up a power vacuum and blah blah blah." And I said, "You know what? He doesn't care about any of that. But you got to understand something. The people who voted for him, it's their children who are fighting those wars,
Right.
not yours.
Yeah, it's North
You're not going to,
Carolina.
yeah,
Yeah,
you're not going to vote for him anyway.
it's the Appalachian kids out there. Yep.
They're out there. They're the ones in combat arms."
Hmm.
So said I, that's who he's playing to.
Hmm.
They're going to get their kids back in one piece and not have to deal with as much PTSD as they would. And they'll have him to thank for it.
You don't believe that Trump is sincere? He's just playing to that base, or do you believe
You
he has
know,
a?
with a politician, that's not something that's easy. It's like ask me if I
Well,
believe
he's not
Putin.
a politician. Apparently, he's a
Not
businessman.
not the normal way. But
Right.
even how sincere is a businessman? I don't know.
I don't know. He's done
Please.
pretty well.
Yeah, he has done pretty well. That mean he's sincere. I do believe he's a sentimentalist.
Right.
That I believe.
Right.
But sentiment will only take you so far.
Right.
Hence, we still celebrate Pride Month, and there's still all the
Right.
LGBT stuff on the National Park Service.
Correct.
Again, I don't say this to be a Debbie Downer,
I
but
know.
you see, people look at this man either through a haze of sanctity or a haze of hatred.
Right. There doesn't seem to be that middle rational for him.
No. And this is what I've tried to do from the beginning. And, I warned a lot of friends of mine who were diehard Trump supporters in the beginning. He's going to disappoint you. If you think you're going to get a religious experience out of politics, it's like trying to get drunk off orange juice.
That's right. That's
And I said the same thing to friends of mine who were big Obama supporters his first run, and thought that the millennia had come. I told them, guys, you are going to be very disappointed if you put your trust in a politician of any kind. If you put your trust in politics, if you expect that's what's going to help you,
Our
you will
faith
be
tells
severely
us, put
disappointed.
not thy trust in princes.
Exactly, even if they're elected,
Yes.
especially if they're
If they're
elected,
elected. I was just gonna say
because then
especially.
they don't even feel, well, I was born to the job. I
Right.
didn't get it because I'm so wonderful. God stuck me here, so I got to do what I can with it. An elected politician never feels that way. It's like the difference between inherited wealth and nouveau riche.
Right.
When you're the inherited
The old
10,
rich and the new rich. The
yeah,
lottery winner versus the Brahmin from
yeah.
the
Now
Northeast.
the Brahmin may very often be far easier to deal with than the lottery winner,
Right.
and that's just the nature of things. But anyway, the point is that if the
So
Trumpster,
if Trumpster wins, no
if he
change.
wins, then once again we have another 4 years.
Of
before the reckoning. Hmm?
okay, well that's a great segue. I appreciate what you just said. Let me, because I did take notes on this, Charles. I was going to try to. So, do you feel that this will be a when Trump gets elected? Well, I feel he will. I mean, even
I
with
think so too. I think
it's
he's going
they couldn't help but give him more votes when they started burning everything the hell down.
to see. That's it. I mean, I'm old
He's the
enough,
law of war.
and I'm old enough, and I'm sure you are too, to remember that it was the long, hot summer of '67 that put Nixon in the White House.
Okay,
Detroit, Newark. Well, see, I was
I
very
was
much
only
aware.
two.
Oh well, then,
Sorry, Charles. I tried to become
yeah.
like hang with
I
you, but I lost.
I guess the train only goes so far, and then you get
So
off.
far.
All right, fine. I'll ride in the caboose. I don't care.
Sorry.
But
Well,
no, but
do you feel if he gets elected again that this will be the what you would term, which I love this, is the third civil war in America?
no, I think it'll put it off.
Are you okay?
I think because you
Well,
see
wait a
his
minute.
being
They're swearing they're going to burn everything down if he wins. Everything, Charles.
yeah, yeah, but see, then the Trumpster
They
won't
call
have to worry
reunion.
about getting elected again.
Right.
And then
The cuffs
he's
are
not
off.
going to care a lot. Yeah. And and I think they're going to find he's very different. See, the thing about our system is that you never
Right.
really get to know the man until the second term.
It's messed up.
The first term, he's trying to get the job again.
Yes.
But the second 4 years, and it's true with every one of them. The
Right.
second term is when. That's why we never really found out what Bush Senior was like because we didn't have him for 2 terms.
That was bizarre, but okay, let's not
But
go there.
we found out what Clinton was like the second term,
Right. Yes.
and we found out what Obama was like the second term.
Right. He was a banker's friend.
And well, not just a banker's friend, but somebody who wanted gay marriage and who was willing to cut off free lunches to poor kids in schools if their schools wouldn't allow boys to use girls' rooms.
Right, because he
That was
was
an
like you said, so the cuffs were off. So Trump could very easily, in his second term, pull out finally the Insurrection Act,
yep, he certainly could.
and this
And
could be horrible or good or. But I
it,
mean,
there's
how do civil wars? See, I have this theory that I was telling my wife that she's very distressed about this. I'm sure a lot of good women are, especially ones that have kids out in this world. And I was discussing with her that I think their numbers are grossly inflated. That their arrogance is making them seem like, I mean, it's so typical. Where the kid in was a Kenosha who shot the three of them.
yeah,
And
and that this
they
is my
thought they
point.
had it covered, and this one kid who's barely an adult took them out. What are you going to do with the Proud Boys who are fully
This
trained?
this is my point, and that's why it'll be 4 years because this thing will end fairly quickly. Now the yapping probably won't. And I would not be surprised, incidentally, to see him go after Soros in a big way with,
Who Trump? You mean?
yeah, with Rico
Well,
and
I
things like
had
that.
asked you this on Facebook. I don't know why this Soros piece of you know what gets to roam free in this world. I don't get it.
Second, second term, I suspect he may very well go after him. Now, that's if he's reelected. I suspect he'll be reelected, and I would not be surprised if the House goes to the Republicans.
Oh, I hope that both Senate and House
I would
totally
not be,
crush.
I,
I
I
hope
would
all
not
the
be
local
surprised.
state legislatures go full right wing. Let me ask
I,
you this, since you brought it up. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. So we're running up
no,
on almost an hour. I mean, if you don't mind giving me more time, I'll make two shows out of this if it's okay with you.
no, that's fine.
I don't know if you have anybody up behind me. The oh heck, the two-party system. I have this theory now that the Democrats have basically, if when Trump wins, if he wins, but I'll say I'm going to go on record, he's winning. If Trump wins, the Democrat Party is about now to go away. I would suggest a party on the right of Trump will rise. How do you feel about that theory?
Well, I'll tell you, here's the thing. I agree with you partially.
Okay.
Um,
I think we need a party to the right of the Republicans. Make the
I,
Republicans the neutral, reasonable party. Like the Democrats used to be years and years and years and years ago.
back in the day
Yeah, back in the day.
when labor was labor.
Right. When labor was labor. Make the Republicans the new Democrat Party and give
I
us a
mean,
nice hard right wing party.
can you imagine there was actually a period when the AFL-CIO and the American Manufacturers Association
Hmm.
and the uh, all the various industrial groups weren't living on different planets from each other? Isn't that
I
funny?
don't know that in my existence. No, I'm sorry, I don't know that.
No, well, I came in at the tail end of that.
Yeah,
Anyway, so the thing was that it didn't last long anyway, but
but
the
you don't see a party of the right of Trump forming.
well, hear me out.
Okay.
If the Trumpster is reelected, the
Hmm.
Democrats will lick their wounds and get crazier. Because remember, their power is not troops on the ground.
Hmm.
Their power is within the structure. They're burrowed deeply. What he calls the deep state, you
Hmm.
could very well call the deep society, the
Sure.
universities, the media. I mean, how do you deal with that? How do you clean that out? No president can do so constitutionally.
Right.
And they will continue to scream and rant and jump up and down. And they will continue to try to build up their troops for the next go round. Now, that brings us to the election of 2024.
Hmm.
Now,
This is where I'm terrified. But go ahead.
you have every reason to be, in my humble estimation,
Hmm.
because I don't think Mr. Trump has it in him to breed a successor.
Well, Pence is a zero in my book. I've never seen a more wallpaper vanilla politician in my whole. He's worse than George Bush,
You generally see
Junior.
that, and he's an apostate, but you generally
Yeah.
see that with big personalities. I mean, this is the problem with somebody like Franco, with
Right.
Salazar.
Right.
The big personality. Okay, well, what do you do for an encore? How do you follow that? So either in 2024 or in 2020, if President Harris is elected, the Harris administration she
No, I
spoke
get
of,
it. All right. Tell me what
uh,
to say.
if either of those occur, when either of those occur, in other words, the next Democrat in the White House,
Hmm.
they will continue along the crazy path that they were on under Obama, only more so because they're crazy
Hmm.
and they're insane, they're nuts, and they're evil and they're stupid. That will wake up the great mass of folk that we were talking about. And now comes the time to talk about the Third Civil War.
Right. But the problem is there's no demarcation like in the second Civil War.
No, it'll be much more like the First Civil War. However, there are some things to remember, and that is, a good friend of mine who's Armenian descent but Iranian born, brilliant
Hmm.
academic. He said to me, right now it feels a lot like 1917 to me, meaning Russia, 1917.
Which
And
is
I
what I
said,
just read.
well, yeah, just so. I said, well, yeah, but there's some significant differences.
Okay.
In Russia, the armaments, communications, all that stuff were concentrated in the Moscow St. Petersburg corridor. The
Okay.
communists took control of that immediately.
Hmm.
It took them 5 years to conquer the rest of the country because it's a big country.
Right. I got what you're saying. Sure.
But in the end, they won because that's everything that they needed was in what they took over initially. In this case, to the degree that there's a geographical background here, and I'll use reds and whites, stealing the terms from the Russian Revolution,
Right.
the Russian Civil War.
Right.
The reds are concentrated on the coasts
Hmm.
and in the decaying cities.
Hmm.
The whites are everywhere else.
Everywhere else. Correct.
And the centers of communication, the military, the armaments, and all that. Those things are precisely in the heart of the white areas, as
In
opposed to the
America
red
today, you mean?
in America today. Now, another difference, by the way, you mentioned the thought maybe there'd be a third civil war under Trump. Well, the other problem with that is that both combat arms, at least in the military, and law enforcement will stay loyal to the government if Trump's at the head of it.
Right. It's
But
pretty
in
clear.
the
You'd have to be an idiot cop to support Biden or
yeah,
Harris. Harris, I
yeah,
should say.
Harris. But in the event of a Harris administration trying to crack down on the deplorables,
Mm-hmm.
um, I do not believe they would be able to count on the loyalty of either law enforcement or combat arms. I
I
think
know the
national,
sheriffs wouldn't. The sheriffs wouldn't go for it.
yeah, it would be. I mean, that's where you would get real civil war. So that's likely to happen under the Harris regime. What would come out of that? I have one major suspicion that out of such a civil war, we would get a strong man,
Mm-hmm.
and he would be wrapped in the flag.
And
He
the
would lift
cross.
high the cross,
Right.
probably without a corpus on it.
Without a corpus, a
Without
Protestant
a
cross.
corpus. Well, or at least as a pan-Christian cross. So Catholics would feel reconciled to fighting under his banner.
Yeah, you said this exact thing in that discussion I talked about with you and Mr. Franchini. And my wife and I then had a discussion. Well, the strongman's always a bad thing. And I'm like, no,
No,
sorry, it's
it's
not
not.
always a bad thing.
What the problem with it, as with strongmen, I consider for their times and places good guys,
Right,
Franco, Pinochet,
right,
Salazar, and so on.
correct.
The problem with these guys is that it's all, and the problem with the bad ones as well, is that the
Right.
strongman, it's always about him. To the degree that he's good, to the degree that he's bad, to the degree that he's sane, to the degree that he's nuts. And then establishing a succession can be a problem. But there's no way to know what he's going to be like until he arises.
Well, I could actually end this discussion on something that's come up, and I think you'll love this.
Okay?
It's come out of the Q world.
Oh,
The Q world.
you mean Princess Diana is Q?
No,
Oh,
JFK
it's still alive.
Jr. is still alive, and in
Yes, and he's
October, the October surprise will be his resurrection and Trump's new running mate. Now, listen, I like the idea if it was true. Go ahead.
trust the plan. Trust the plan.
Wait a minute. That's not an answer. Give me an answer. What?
No, that's
Can
what the
you
Q says.
imagine what would happen?
Yeah, I can. Criswell would resurrect.
Now,
I mean,
wait a
look,
minute.
I was raised in Hollywood in the '60s. You can't out
Right.
weird me.
I know.
I mean,
I can't out weird you, but that is pretty cool weirdness.
I,
I mean,
I tell
if
you,
it were true, I get like really excited about that whole
if
scenario.
that were true, listen, Judge Crater would come back. I mean, look him up,
Oh, here we
Judge
go.
Crater.
You give me all this homework. I don't want to talk
What,
to you.
what the hell do I look like? Some sort of free school?
Yes, that's
No,
exactly
I'm
what
not. I'm just
say,
a poor old man who's
Yeah,
an exile from his native land.
Charles, this has been a great conversation. I'm gonna wrap it up.
Uh,
I'd like when I get done, I'll stop recording. We'll have a little quick conversation about the next time. Okay.
all right.
All right. So this is the ever loquacious and adaptable Charles Cologne.
Oh boy. Legend in his own mind.
And this is Joseph Brothers Show signing off. Okay, we're just gonna stop.